Yo, what's going on? How are you?
Good, man. Do you have your stream going?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, cool. All right. Basically, we're going to be debating veganism. We're definitely going to cover ethics, but if you have an interest, we can cover health, nutrition as well. Uh, so, I'm not sure if you know what veganism is. A lot of people hear different things from different vegans. Some people say it's just a diet. Some people will give you like an ethical explanation. So you're debating me specifically, and this is my definition of veganism. Veganism is an ethical belief, philosophy, and way of living which seeks to grant animals the same rights as human beings if they were to be trade equalized. Veganism and giving animals rights is just a logical extension of human rights. The reason it's a logical extension of human rights is because I don't see any meaningful difference between humans and animals where I would grant rights to humans but not rights to animals. The challenge I would ask to you is to provide a symmetry breaker, some kind of meaningful difference between humans and animals that would make it logically consistent to grant humans rights but not animals rights. So you're going to have to name a trait or set of traits that animals lack but human beings do not lack. And in order to be logically consistent, if you are to identify these traits that are lacking in animals, if they were lacking in a human being, you would have to be okay with killing a human being and treating them the same way you would treat an animal.
Okay. So have we started or
Yeah.
were you just like, we've started. I didn't even realize, my bad. Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, humans and animals are not the same. It's empirical. You don't even have to put that much thought into it. But if you wanted to put a little bit more thought into it, one of the things that I would probably say is that we don't give the retarded the same rights that we give people of average or above average IQs, even below average IQ. There is a cutoff where you are not allowed to drive, you're not allowed to do
Yep.
certain things, own guns, fire guns, et cetera, if you do not have the IQ points to match, or if there's some other deficiency and things like that. And I'm not saying animals are retarded necessarily, although there's some. I don't know. I don't know. You can make the point, but
Well, compared to humans, yeah, they're basically retarded.
yeah, and because of that, it's obviously a sliding scale. It's not like we hunt and kill people with Down syndrome for meat or pelt or anything like that. But given the fact that they are so different from us on a level that literally makes them inhumane, I don't see a reason to view them as our equals in that way.
Yeah, so we still grant human rights to mentally retarded people. It's just that we take away some rights based on their level of competency and whether or not they're a harm to themselves or others. So we're not going to give somebody who's severely mentally disabled a right to drive, a right to own firearms. They may not even be allowed to live on their own and they have to live in like a care home. And that's because there's an interest to the individual to protect themselves. Obviously, if a mentally disabled person was behind a wheel or had a gun, they could easily harm themselves or harm other people. And even if they were living alone, they could easily harm themselves or perhaps harm somebody else. Like if they have a severe autistic breakdown, they could just go out, attack somebody if they didn't have like a carer who could manage some of their, I don't know, outbursts. That doesn't mean we kill them and turn them into hamburgers. So they still have basic human rights. Again, in the proposition I made, animals would be granted the same rights as human beings if they were to be trade equalized. So the trait you named here was like cognitive capacity or mental disability. Um, so from my perspective, a dog, okay, they can't drive, they can't own a gun, they can't vote. A human being with that same lack of cognitive capability would have those same rights restricted, but we wouldn't be okay with killing the human. And most people also wouldn't be okay with killing a dog either, because we have this like weird thing with pets. But cows, chickens, pigs, relatively similar levels of intelligence. Pigs are actually, in fact, smarter than dogs. There's some like species of birds, like parrots, that are arguably smarter than dogs. It would be wrong to kill them for the same reason it would be wrong to kill a human being.
Well, it's just not to sit here and get up on semantics and things like that, but I just think it's interesting that you want to give human rights to non-human entities. It's just like I don't know. Maybe you should think of something different to call it then, if that's the case. And
Well, that's what it is.
yeah,
So,
what you
let's say Star Trek was real or something, and Vulcans came to Earth, and there was an intelligent alien species that came to Earth. They're not humans. We would grant them human rights because they have the same basic traits that we do. They're conscious, they're intelligent, they may even be more intelligent than us because they have interstellar travel. They even have very similar cultural norms. So we would still call it human rights because those were like we're granting the same rights that are granted to human beings. You can call it whatever you want. You could just call it universal rights. You could just call it rights, period. I'm just saying veganism is a logical extension of human rights, and human rights should be granted to animals, just so everyone understands what I'm talking about.
I call it dinner is what I call it. Um, I mean, look, like, yeah, like I said, we don't hunt and kill the retarded for sport, obviously, right?
We have.
Um, well, hey, I don't agree with that necessarily, but um, at the end of the day, even comparing the retarded to dogs insofar as like a human is gonna be able to like I don't know. I guess when it comes down to it, uh, dogs, dogs and people are just not the same. And if you're going to sit here and try and conflate the two, you're running into problems that you cannot solve. You're running into circles that you cannot square. And if we're going to sit here and we're going to have those varying degrees, that sliding scale of how we treat certain individuals, it's regardless of what you say, it's going to be kind of tough for me to get behind the idea that we should give a gerbil the same rights that we would a human. And I forget if you went over it or not already. What would you define human rights as? Like, could you give me some examples of what human rights would be?
Well, we could just go by the International Human Rights Code. We could go by the American Human Rights Code. There's a well established idea and process of human rights in most modern Western countries.
Okay, but what is that though?
Well, again, like, do you, I don't know why, I don't know if we really have to discuss this. Like, do you agree with the idea of human rights? Like, should humans have rights?
Well, I mean, the thing is, when we're sitting here using loaded terms, and well, look, I don't want to call human rights a loaded term, but when we're using terms that are undefined, they can be loaded. They can be used in ways that are not quite clear or anything like that. I'm not saying that that's what you're trying to do. I'm just saying that
Yeah, I'm
until
not
we can
using
define that.
any I'm not using any loaded terms unless you disagree with the idea of human rights. Like, do you believe in like the United States Constitution, where you have basic rights and freedoms, you have a right to life, you have a right to freedom of expression, those sorts of things?
Well, I mean, you're talking about using international standards, and then you're changing it to American standards. Yeah, I believe in the Constitution. I
Well,
believe in
American
the defense of
standards
animals and stuff like that.
align pretty perfectly with international human rights standards.
Not quite, but that's another conversation.
Like, there's differences in things like free speech, but that's also part of international human rights standards.
Okay,
It's just
so
that international
you're
human rights standards might not protect like hate speech, whereas in America it does.
so if a dog says something mean about Muslims, can they be arrested?
Like, I don't see them saying anything mean about Muslims, and if a dog were to say something mean about Muslims, I'd be all for it. There should be more criticism of Islam, if you ask me. I
I
would say
agree
that
on that.
dog is pretty goddamn based if he's calling the Prophet Muhammad a pedophile.
All right, we agree there. We agree there. Um, Sorry, one sec. Um,
So I
yeah,
think
yeah, you go ahead.
I think you're getting kind of like weirded out at this idea of like, I don't know, a pig or a gerbil having human rights. So in the proposition, I outlined specifically that animals would have human rights if they were to be trade equalized to a human. So if a human had the same rough cognitive abilities, roughly the same degree of sentience, we would grant animals the same rights as that human being would have in that context. So because like a dog can't give political opinions or can't, you know, say anything that would be considered hate speech, or say something that would disturb the peace, like yell fire in a crowded theater. These just aren't these just aren't issues. So you could ignore that. Like a dog isn't going to try to like advocate for its rights to vote. Those aren't the kinds of problems we're talking about here. The kinds of problems we're talking about is whether or not we'd be okay with living in a society where mentally disabled human beings would be killed and eaten for burgers, and whether or not we want to live in a society where animals with a similar level of intelligence would be killed and eaten for burgers. That's the fundamental issue we're talking about. And like we were talking about dogs a little bit specifically. Like, I'm sure you don't want people to hit and abuse their dogs. You don't want people kicking their dogs. You don't want people using maybe pain compliance devices like shock collars or prong collars that would harm a dog's overall well being, things like that. So, if you're going to give that sort of level of compassion and consideration to an animal like a dog, we are like we do live in a society where dogs are nearly treated as we would treat a mentally disabled child. They don't have quite the same rights and protections, but they do have close to the same rights and protections. We do already have, animal rights laws. It is illegal to kick your dog. It is illegal to abuse your dog. So if you agree with those sorts of principles for an animal like a dog, I don't know how you can't apply those same sorts of principles to other animals.
Well, the fact of the matter is, sorry, there's seems like my thing is malfunctioning. But the fact of the matter is, like, we know human rights to be more than what these animals are capable of even being able to utilize, right? That is part of what we have judged or used to judge over the years. And I know it hasn't been perfect. Humanity's come a long way. But that's part of what we've used to judge over the years whether or not a group, specifically of humanoids, was actually worth it insofar as, like, should we colonize? Should we build railroads and all this other stuff, right? We wouldn't do that till island in Brazil or anything like that, where there's like snakes every few feet. And I just feel that you're coming from a standpoint of trying to get me to say that I agree with human rights, which I of course do, but then using it in a way that is incongruent with the way that most people think of the situation. At the end of the day, like, I don't want to get, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to give human rights to a cow because, for one thing, it couldn't even grasp the concept, no matter how intelligent it is. It couldn't grasp the concept in the first place. And then, yeah, I like eating meat. Bottom line,
So,
I had feijoada, right? It's pork and beans, Brazilian pork and beans, very good. If you ever break veganism, as unlikely as it is, try it out. Um, it's a situation where I'm not afraid to say it, like, fuck ethics, man. I like steak. And then on top of that, even ethically, like I said, you just run into situations where you can't square circles, and you get to a point where you're saying, like, you won't have to worry about them voting. You won't have to worry about, hate speech. Of course, was being a little peaky about that dog hate speech thing earlier. That was a joke, but you end up in a situation where you're picking and choosing, like, what human rights to afford it based off of what is going to make sense, as opposed to just taking human rights as a whole as we understand it. And I think that's dangerous because who's to say you can't apply human rights to other things? Like plants, for instance, trees. They communicate with each other to try and help each other, for one thing. Injured trees will help out other injured trees. And then you're talking about like compassion and things like that. Yeah, like, are compassionate. That doesn't mean that you have to give an animal the right to the right to do whatever it is they would be able to do under your system, other than not be eaten for food if they happen to be cattle or an animal that's hunted.
yeah, so a few things to point out there. First of all, we wouldn't give human rights to plants or trees because they're not conscious. There is no way in which they could benefit from human rights. We only apply human rights to conscious beings. They are not sentient. They can't think or feel. They might have intelligence and be able to communicate with each other, but your phone has intelligence. AI has intelligence. That doesn't
AI is just
mean,
an algorithm, though.
well, yeah. You could argue plants have their own kind of algorithm built into their DNA, but they're not sentient, which is why we wouldn't give them rights.
Well,
Secondly,
well, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you.
So, secondly, again, you're not actually, like, you have named a trait. So far, the trait is intelligence, and what intelligence entails, like being able to advocate for your own rights. Mentally disabled people cannot advocate for themselves, especially if they're severely mentally disabled. But we still give them human rights because we understand they can think and feel, they can benefit from these rights, and we don't want to see other people suffer. We don't want to see them be abused or live out on the street and slowly rot away and die or harm themselves in some kind of way. If you're going to give mentally disabled people human rights, but you have a group of organisms that have roughly the same cognitive capacity, and in some cases greater cognitive capacity, I think pigs have been noted to have roughly the intelligence of a 4 or 5-year-old. Other animals like parrots, around the same level of intelligence. There are people who are so severely mentally disabled, I don't even know if you can really measure their level of intelligence. But we still grant them rights. So if you're going to say animals can't advocate for themselves, they don't have the mental capacity, but you would give human beings that share those same traits or lack of traits human rights, then what's the symmetry breaker? Because right now that's a contradiction.
The fact that they're human. They are humans, therefore they get human rights. And I know that under your idea, oh well, human rights doesn't necessarily just have to be afforded to humans, but that's the whole reason we're here, is to argue that you're trying to compare dogs to mentally disabled people in a way that's to say that a human and a dog should have the same ability to do whatever they feel like, regardless of whether they can think or feel. And that's the thing is, dogs can feel, right? They know when someone's being like mean, whether physically, or you have some dogs that they will react, when you're like yelling at them and stuff like that. They'll do the little pouty thing. But they aren't sentient in the way that humans are, and that's just a fact. They don't have the capacity for language. They don't have the ability to grasp complex concepts in the way that we do. I think they've been compared to like 7 or 8 year olds or something like that, and we don't give 7 or 8 year olds rights. You literally
You
don't
do have
have
rights as a
rights.
7 or 8-year-old.
Yeah, a right to not be like a right to not be like held against your will as a human being. But when you're born into captivity and that's all you know, that's all you've been trained for, or not trained for, but that's what you are for as a cattle animal, like a cow or a pig or something like that. It's sort of a situation where it's like, look, like I don't have kids, but when I do, if somebody tries to tell me that the pig at the zoo should have the same rights as my 7 year old son or daughter, I'm gonna tell them to fuck off. It's just the way that it is.
Okay, so you mentioned the trait human, so we can add that on. How do you define human?
Human. Oh boy. Oh boy. We're getting it. We're getting into metaphysics here.
Well, it's
Um.
not metaphysics, depending
Well, yeah.
on
It's
how you
it's.
define
I know.
human.
It's
Like,
it's
is
it's a
it
joke.
just like species?
Yes, I'm making a joke. So a human. Well, you see, but that's the thing. You're purposefully trying to. It feels like you're purposefully trying to pigeonhole me into defining humans as strictly animals when that's much more broad. Do I believe we're animals? Yes, but I think we're probably a little bit more than animals given everything that is around us right now. Um, Humans, I would say, are. I mean, hey, it's tough. Nobody's ever asked me that question.
Well,
It's
we're a
again, it's
species of
sort of it's
ape.
sort of empirical.
Like, do you know what a woman is?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
adult
pretty
human
easy to
female.
define. Like, do you know what a human is?
What's it called? Two X chromosomes, ovaries, vagina.
That's technically not the definition of a woman, but if we want to get pedantic, it has to do with sexual traits, not chromosomes. But in either case, humans are animals. We're a species of great ape, and human is defined as being a member of the species Homo sapiens sapien.
Look, just because your grandfather was a monkey doesn't mean mine was, bro. Fucking like, I'm not someone who is a hardline Bible thumper, but I do believe there's more than humanity than we're just descendants of great apes and things like that. I think there is something a lot more vast than we can understand.
Well, do you believe in
And
evolution?
uh I could believe evolution is or was and is a tool of God. Yeah. I
Well,
think
that's
that
fine.
the
You can
way
believe
things
in God
work.
and believe in evolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So Is that your definition? Just being a part of the species Homo sapiens sapien?
Uh, Only because I haven't really put more thought into what makes a human. Well, you see, here's the thing. We're getting into. I was trying to avoid religion, but I'll just fuck it. We'll dive right in. Um, God created Adam and Eve. He allowed Adam to name all of the animals. He gave them to us for food and other aspects. When we ended up getting sent down to earth, we got cast out of heaven. That's how we had to make our bread. You know, figuratively and literally, was working the field and hunting. God gave us the animals, right? I was trying to avoid it, but that's the way it is. You know.
Okay, but regardless of that, you agree? Like, do we agree on the definition of what a human is?
Uh, that you see, I don't want to agree with you because even though it's not something I a million percent object to, what I'm trying to say is I think there's more to it than just that. And I was trying to avoid philosophical
Well,
or
it's fine.
religious.
You can believe human beings have been granted some sort of special importance under God. I'm just asking whether or not you agree on the definition of like human.
All right, so yeah, we'll go by your definition just for the sake of trying to make the argument a little bit easier.
Right. So let's just say you could get species differentiation from uh, a single generation. So somebody could birth someone else that isn't a human being. Um, and let's say the person they birthed was mentally disabled. Would you be okay with killing that mentally disabled non-human that was birthed from a human being?
Um, well, I mean, depends on what we're talking about here. Are we talking about an abomination?
Well,
Are we talking about something that's going to be suffering, or are we talking about basically
well, it could suffer if you turn it into hamburgers.
well, if it's turned into hamburgers, it ain't suffering anymore.
Well, afterwards.
What do you mean afterwards? It's dead. It's already been turned into hamburgers. It's in my
Well, on the
stomach
way
being
there,
shit
it
out
can suffer.
on the way there. All right, but is it suffering in the moment? And is it an abomination of some form?
I don't know what you mean by abomination, but just to be more clear, let's say we had some sort of special scanning tool that can scan your genome, and certain people born do not have the cluster genetics that would make them part of the human species. So they wouldn't be Homo sapiens sapien, they'd be something else.
I
And
see what the I don't. Hey, say no more, man. I see what's going on here. And my answer to that is, what if I had a magic wand that turned somebody from this allegedly suffering abomination into a human or into, say, like a regular cow? What if I had something of that kind?
I don't know, but what would your stance be on like whether or not you grant that being human rights?
I don't know because that was fucking preposterous. What you just said to me, man. Like,
Okay, well, let me ask you maybe an easier question. If aliens came down to Earth, let's say Vulcans actually existed, it wasn't just some kind of fantasy thing out of Star Trek, but there was an alien species that came down to planet Earth. You would grant them human rights, correct? Like you wouldn't say, "Well, you're not human. I guess I'll turn you into hamburgers."
well, I mean, if they come down and they're sentient and they have the same capacity for,
Yeah, we'll assume they have the same.
communication and
Yeah.
all that stuff, then yeah, I probably wouldn't be pulling out the meat grinder.
So the common denominator doesn't seem to be species. If there's an alternative species that is intelligent, you wouldn't want to kill them. But if there's an alternate species that is not intelligent, you wouldn't. You would be okay with killing them.
Well, it entirely depends. Is the alternate unintelligent species a good food source? Because we don't kill tigers for food because they're not a good
Well,
food source.
you can eat a tiger just fine. The reason we don't do it is primarily just because there's not an interest in killing and eating them.
Because
People
they're
do eat
not a good food
tigers.
source.
People do absolutely eat tigers.
I'm sure they can.
So like, what do you mean by good food source? Like, you can eat anything. You can
You
eat
can't eat
people. During the
you can't
Liberian
eat
Civil
anything.
Wars, there was a lack of food, but there was a ton of dead bodies, and people would eat dead corpses to survive. People are a perfectly adequate food source.
Yeah, but the difference being that that's an abomination versus cattle. And you're asking me hypothetical questions because if you were to ask me about like cows or something like that, that would be
Well,
again preposterous.
I'm asking you about your ethical values. So
My ethical values.
I'm just trying to find out whether or not you actually value some of these traits you're talking about. So you don't seem to particularly value whether or not a species is human, because that's not a common denominator to take away human rights. You seem to care about things like intelligence. So if there was an intelligent, non-human species, you wouldn't want to kill and eat them. But if there was a non-intelligent, non-human species, you would be fine with killing and eating them.
You see, again, this is a hypothetical that I don't really feel it's just weird the line of questioning you're trying to lead me down where you're just gonna continue asking questions that are designed to try and get me in some kind of weird gotcha. And now that I'm calling you out on it, you're saying you're just trying to gauge my ethics.
Well, yeah,
It's just
I'm.
strange, man. Like at the end of the
Well,
day, cows are food. That's just what they are.
the
No amount of fucking like aliens coming down and being either retarded or autistic savants is gonna change that, you know?
Yeah, so the proposition I made is really just pointing out that I don't think there's any way of advocating for killing animals without also advocating for taking away human rights.
And
Um,
why is that?
well, I think we're demonstrating that over the course of this discussion. If you're fine with killing, um, not so if you're fine with killing people that are, or sorry, non-human animals that are mentally retarded, or lack the kind of cognitive capability that your average human has, that would logically entail that you would be okay with killing mentally disabled human beings, or at least
No.
a species that you would have an interest in granting rights.
You see this is what I'm talking about. You're asking questions that are designed to just get deeper and deeper and more like weird and complex in a bid to try and catch me so that this was your big reveal was like you'd kill retarded people. What are you talking about? What are you talking about, bro? What are you doing here right
Okay,
now, man?
well, how about we get away from talking about aliens?
Yeah, let's
So
keep talking about retards.
you believe in you believe in evolution, correct?
Yeah.
So humans evolved from apes, which evolved from some sort of monkey-like creature, which evolved from some sort of other simpler being. How far back in our evolutionary history would you be okay with killing our ancestors?
What for food or just killing them in general? Because I'd never eat an
Yes,
ape.
so killing them for food.
Yeah, I'd never eat an ape, you know?
Well, why
Comes
not?
down to it all, huh?
Well, why not?
Not a good food source, at least not the way I see it. Not appealing
Um,
to me. Somebody else
they're
wanted
So people have and do eat apes. It's bushmeat.
People eat shit, dude.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah, but you said not having the cognitive capacity of a human being and not being part of the human species were the two traits. If you go back far enough in our evolutionary history, we wouldn't be part of the genus Homo, and we wouldn't have human level intelligence. So, how far back in our evolutionary history would be okay to kill our ancestors and eat them?
Uh, Beats me. I'd say probably. Hmm, whatever common ancestor we had with all the other apes, because we aren't descended from apes in the way that people think we are. It's not like there's it's not like we sprang out of the apes we see today. There was a common ancestor and they did
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So you're
Okay, and
saying from the point where we split off from like chimpanzees?
yeah, and again, these are like ridiculous questions. I'm only entertaining them for the sheer amusement. But yeah,
So okay,
if you put a gun to my head and said you're gonna die if you don't pick one to kill, I'm probably gonna go back to the ape that split off into what we have today and us, or even earlier than that if it comes down to it.
okay,
And
so
no, I wouldn't kill my
if
own.
right, so if there was another intelligent species that was on the planet, or say an alien civilization that came to Earth, saw our ancient ancestors and said they're not as smart as us. They don't have our Vulcan level of intelligence. So it's okay to kill and eat them. You'd be fine with that other intelligent life form basically preventing humanity from ever existing.
Are we really on fucking ancient aliens right now, dude? This is the turn we've
Well, it's
taken.
not necessarily ancient aliens. Let's just assume there was like another intelligent life form on the planet. Like maybe dinosaurs evolved a higher level of intelligence and weren't wiped out. And they saw these like chimpanzees, running,
Sure.
or chimpanzee like being. You'd be fine with wiping out all of humanity
Oh,
because
dude,
you have,
dude, I'd help him out. I'd
yeah.
help him out. I'd drop the fucking nuke, bro.
Okay. Well, I think you're being a little facetious. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but this is kind of like this is what is entailed from your moral values. You'd have to be okay with some other intelligent life forms wiping out all of humanity before we had a chance to evolve and gain the intelligence we have today, because you think these two traits, or really it's just one trait, because you seem to really only care about intelligence. Like if you were to come across a cow that was as intelligent as any human being and could read and write and learn human culture, you wouldn't be okay with killing a cow, presumably, right?
I mean, hey, if it means I get to eat steak, you know what? Yeah, I would.
You
I,
would?
I would. Yeah, fuck him. Fuck that cow.
Okay, well, I think you're joking,
No, I'm
but
not.
I'm pretty sure you're not being serious. But I like being real for a second here. You would actually be okay with all of humanity getting wiped out before we ever actually got a chance to exist, because again, presumably, it's okay to just wipe out creatures that are not at a certain level of intelligence.
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest.
Yep.
That's all you care about.
Yep.
Well, if that's all
Oh,
you
dude,
care.
I'm a social Darwinist, dude. I think I
social
think heroin
Darwinist.
users, unless they're willing to get help, I think they should be left completely and totally alone to do whatever the hell they feel like.
So,
Because if they wanna fuck themselves up, go right ahead. Just don't do it on my tax money. Either that,
so
or if we're gonna have tax money, actually make it so that they're going to get the help.
So I'm
Go ahead.
curious, if you're interested in survival of the fittest and Darwinism, social Darwinism, do you see any problem with like genocides or holocausts?
What, as in what, like the Armenian genocide
Yeah,
or
or
the
the
Holodomor?
Nazi, like the Jewish genocide or Holocaust, any of these, because
The Jews genocided somebody?
well, no, the Nazis.
Oh, those
Because
guys.
again,
Yeah, I don't like those
presumably
guys.
survival of the fittest, if there's a weaker culture that gets wiped out, that would be fine, right?
Whatever you say, man. Whatever you say,
Well,
yeah.
I'm just trying to understand your moral values.
Because humans shouldn't be rounded up like cattle, and whatever the hell happened in whatever Holocaust or Holocaust, Holodomor, Great Leap Forward, that's not something that should be happening to humans. And it's not happening because people are like, oh, yes, we need food. At least I would like to think the Nazis didn't cannibalize the Jews
The
or gays
Japanese
or anything
did.
like that. Yeah, well, hey, take that up with them, man. That ain't none of my business. Those guys have always been weird as far as I'm concerned. But um, fucking the bottom line is there's a difference between the Holocaust and the Purdue chicken factory, even though the Purdue chicken factory is pretty disgusting, and the cattle should be treated better overall. To compare the two is like insane. I'm sorry, but it's they're just not the same. They're just not.
Well, again, you've stated that if we go back far enough in human history where we split off from chimpanzees, you would have been fine with our ancestors being rounded up like cattle and getting turned into burgers. So if you're fine with the human species never having existed, I don't know how you could. Well, I guess that's the only way to justify chicken farming or cattle farming or any of this sort of farming. But it's hard for me to believe that you actually are okay with the idea of us never existing, assuming some other intelligent species had the same kind of preferences you had or sensibilities you had, where they're less intelligent than us. So I guess we can just wipe them out, turn them into hamburgers or chicken nuggets or what have you.
Well, that's just the thing. We exist. It didn't happen, and if it did happen, I wouldn't be here to be having this conversation.
Right, but
So,
you have the benefit of being here and thinking about this. So
yeah, and I've thought about it, and I like hamburgers.
so your way of justifying eating hamburgers is it's okay if the human species were to have been wiped out.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. How about we talk about some like nutrition topics if you're interested?
Oh, dude, I'm just the man for that.
Yeah?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, there's certain dietary
They call me the
patterns.
pot belly ginger.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, there
sir.
yeah, so there's certain dietary patterns that I think are ideal for the human race. Um, Diets that are high in plant foods, particularly fruits and vegetables, and high in fiber. Um, Beans and lentils seem to be the food that is most highly correlated with longevity. Avoidance of saturated fat and cholesterol, and getting the majority of your fat sources from poly and monounsaturated fat sources seem to be ideal, and avoiding red meat in particular. Those seem to be dietary patterns that are ideal for human health. That sort of dietary pattern causes the least prevalence of obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. So, a dietary pattern that fits that best would be a vegan diet that consists of mostly whole foods. What do you think of that?
Um, hey, I don't know, man. Fucking beats the hell out of me. I do know that meat is healthy for you, regardless of what you are trying to say about it. At the end of the day, nobody gets out of life alive. And if I live to be 70 or 75, I'm going to die anyway. So when it comes down to it, I think I'm totally okay with the lack of the purported, the alleged lack of health that apparently is coming with me eating my burger and stuff like that.
Okay, but if you had an interest in living longer and avoiding chronic disease, would
I
you
don't.
agree that, okay, so assuming you would have an interest, you might not personally, but assuming you would have an interest in living as long as you could while avoiding chronic disease, would you agree that sort of dietary pattern is ideal for that sort of goal?
I don't know if you're telling the truth. I don't know if you know whether you're telling the truth or not. I think you probably just picked your cherry picked studies and things like that, and you're now trying to turn around and be like, "Oh, you see, plants are us." Dude, just like Kellogg's breakfast cereal, fucking, they funded their own studies and shit like that. Like that shit still happens today. I don't believe anyone when it comes to food. I'll be honest with you, but. Um, I do know that humans have been omnivorous since the dawn of fallen eggs. Eggs have good. Oh fuck! I was just poke the shit out of myself. Um, Cholesterol in eggs. Eggs actually have good cholesterol in them. There's two types of cholesterol. I think it's like HDL and LDL. I think HDL is the good cholesterol. I remember growing up, people were like, don't eat eggs because they have cholesterol in them." It was the good fucking cholesterol. That's just an example of like how muddied the waters are when it comes to food. So when it comes down to it, yeah, sure. In theory, if everything you're saying is correct, all right, fine. Yeah. Sounds great. Sounds fantastic. I still don't care. Doesn't matter to me at all. I don't plan on living forever. Um, but yeah, sure.
Well, a few things to point out. So, the longest living population on the planet is the Californian Adventist vegetarians. They're the longest living population of people that have ever been studied. Now, in places like Okinawa, Japan, there's a higher amount of centenarians, so people living over 100, but their average life expectancy isn't quite as high. So the reason you see more centenarians there is probably due to genetics as opposed to like lifestyle factors. Secondly, there's very large and long-term cohorts like the Adventist Health Studies and the Oxford Vegetarian Cohort. Vegans and vegetarians do live longer than just typical meat eaters. And on top of that, there's trials like the Leon Heart trial, where they put people on a Mediterranean diet pattern, again, lowered their saturated fat and cholesterol intake, ate more whole plant foods, more beans, lentils, fruits, and vegetables, and lowered their red meat intake. And that's one of the most successful trials for treatment of heart disease. And the egg thing you mentioned, eggs do raise your LDL bad cholesterol, which is it's the primary cause of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So eggs will raise your HDL cholesterol somewhat, but the majority of the increase in your serum cholesterol score is going to come in the form of the bad kind of cholesterol, the LDL. So
Did you know that bodybuilders live less time on average?
yes, and that's due to their bad diet and steroids. So the stress from competing, like the dehydration and crap.
How do you know it's not specifically because they're lifting weights? How do you know lifting weights isn't bad for you?
Well, there's studies on this.
Studies by who? Big Planet Fitness?
No. I think it was done by the National Institute of Health. They have found benefits with resistance training. So people who resistance train tend to live longer.
Yeah, and no, I actually agree with that as somebody who is in the MMA world myself. I don't disagree with that, right? But the point that I'm trying to make with that is that you're sitting here pointing to all these people who there are a lot more other things that go on in their life other than them just sitting around eating vegetables all the time. This is actually something that was, to my understanding, noticed in Italy and Italian communities in America. All of a sudden, they went from being a pretty healthy group of people to having a bunch of heart problems and shit like that. And it was because of the one, the diet, but two, the fact that instead of having to walk around and work with their bodies and things like that, cars got invented. Public transportation got invented when they came over from their rustic Italian towns to New York, the North End, Boston, things like that, right? What I'm saying is, for one thing, obviously the Seventh Day Adventists are going to be like, yeah, we're the best. The way our way of life is the best. Um, but at the end of the day, to sit here and chalk it up to just their diet, that's not nearly the whole picture.
Yeah, so there's no prospective cohort that looks at raw data. They make adjustments to the data set to account for lifestyle factors like exercise, cigarette smoking, socioeconomic status, alcohol consumption. And after adjusting for all of these factors, they are still the longest living population that has been studied. They do live longer than your average American. So again, the diet seems to play the significant role here. That's what they're analyzing. They're measuring like for like. They're not comparing populations of people who don't smoke, don't drink, are wealthy, eat very well, exercise, to a population of people who eat poorly, smoke, drink, never exercise, are poor. They're measuring like for like.
What about Indians? They do eat chicken, right? They do eat chicken, so it's not the best I suppose, but they don't eat meat, or excuse me, they don't eat red meat. And because of that, a lot of their diet seems to be spice, literally spices half the time. But in addition to that, a bunch of other things that are non-meat related. How like have you ever just have you
Yeah,
ever bothered to look into them? Have you ever bothered to look into anybody else who's not
yeah,
like what you would consider to be like a good representation of your ideology?
yeah. So Indians do have higher rates of heart disease, and that seems to be due to their saturated fat consumption primarily. So they eat a lot of dairy in the form of butter, clarified butter, also called ghee. So that's probably the main reason why you see higher rates of heart disease in Indians. I've talked to some doctors who've also said they also just have narrower arteries. I don't know if that's true. There might be some genetic differences where they're more prone to atherosclerosis. But they eat a lot of saturated fat. There's also issues with like malnutrition and crap in India. There's a lot of poor people. I think they also have a pretty high smoking prevalence. And pollution in India is also really bad. There's a lot of like smog from like the traffic jams and cars running all day. There's a variety of reasons why you see higher rates of heart disease in places like India, despite them eating much lower quantities of red meat. People have also pointed out the Japanese, they have very low rates of heart disease despite eating a very high cholesterol intake. Now, they eat very low amounts of saturated fat. And saturated fat has a much bigger effect on your serum cholesterol score and thus your risk of heart disease than dietary cholesterol. So that accounts for those sorts of differences.
Okay.
So again, if we have an interest in living longer, healthier lives, I would say a plant-based dietary pattern is going to be ideal. And if you have an interest in not being a genocidal asshole who pays for animals to get tortured and murdered, you might also not want to eat meat.
And if you want to live a little before you ultimately fall off this mortal coil, I say order a 12-ounce ribeye.
Well, you can eat plenty of good vegan food, dude. You should check out my Instagram. I post some like food there. I got some really good vegan Chinese takeout. You can eat good food on a vegan diet, and you can enjoy those sorts of foods and live a little longer and a little healthier. So it's a win-win. You don't harm animals, you're healthier, and you can enjoy all the foods you used to enjoy.
Except steak.
There's vegan steaks. They're usually made out of seitan.
That's not a steak.
Well, it's the plant-based
That's
version of the
steak.
steak. By the way, what's your best bench press?
I don't lift weights like that.
No? Okay. I just benched 410 a few weeks ago.
Cool. Congrats.
You want to do a bicep flex? Compare arms?
Nah, I'd rather box.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
actually, I contacted iDubbbz and I told him I wanted to fight with Sam Hyde, but he never got back to me.
Yeah. I don't have anything to say about that guy.
Yeah. He's kind of become ultra cucked.
Yeah. Whatever it is, good luck to him.
But you do have an interest in the betterment of humanity in general, though, don't you?
I wouldn't say I am completely disinterested, but it's something where I realize we're all sinners. We're here because we turned away from God's light, and because of that, we had to be separated from Him. We were not worthy of heaven. And this mortal coil, for one thing, we were given animals as a source of food and beasts of burden, and in some cases, pets. And when we die, we are going to be judged. And one of those judgments, one of the criteria of those judgments is not going to be, did you open up the cage and let the chickens run free?
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
So, if you believe in these biblical stories, what kind of foods do you eat in a garden?
What kind of foods do you eat in a garden?
Yeah, the Garden of Eden. What kind of foods do you normally eat in a garden?
Vegetables. Although in the Garden of Eden, that's where Adam named all of the animals that God created.
Well, he named them. Does it mention he ate them?
It's been a while since I've read the story.
It
but
didn't mention
I'll assume
anything
it did.
about eating them.
Well, when we got sent down here, we were told that animals were to eat.
Yeah, so there's actually a passage from the Bible that says, "No evil shall enter my kingdom, no animals shall be slaughtered." It seems like the original pad was for human beings to just eat plants. So if you want to fall in line with God's plan, why wouldn't you adopt a plant-based diet?
Holy shit, bro. In the Old Testament, it literally tells you which animals you can eat and which animals you cannot eat. And it's not even about, well, this is a good animal. It's literally like clean versus unclean.
Yeah, but like I said, God's original plan was for humans to live in the Garden of Eden. There was never any
Yeah, and we
mention
fucked
of
that
killing
up.
animals. There was, you know what kind of foods you typically eat in a garden. So if you wanted to live more in alignment with God, why wouldn't you eat a plant-based diet?
God's original plan, regardless of what it was, is not the plan that's going on now. We got cast down from the Garden of Eden, from
Well,
paradise, because we ate a fruit. We ate fruit and everything went to shit. Eat a steak, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah, so you're admitting you're committing sin by eating meat.
No.
Yeah, you are.
When the fuck did I say that?
Well, you admit plan was for people to eat a plant-based diet, just eating foods you would typically see in a garden. It's also mentioned in the Bible that once you go into his kingdom, no animals are slaughtered. So there's no meat in heaven.
Yeah, in
Um,
his kingdom.
yeah, there's no meat in heaven.
That's
So do
different from
you?
down here where we were told to eat
So
the
look,
food that was given to us by God, which includes cattle and other wild animals
they
in
we
this
weren't
world.
supposed to eat them. So
Well, God told us to. I'm just
well, he
listening to
didn't.
God. I don't need to
He
listen
didn't
to
tell
humans. I
you
need
to
to
eat
listen to
them.
God.
He
Yeah, he
didn't
did.
tell you to eat them. He said
We
it's
were literally told by God
at
what
best,
animals we can
at
and cannot
best,
eat.
at best, he said it's permitted. So
And
you're going away from God, according to your, biblical scripture, if you eat meat. On top of
no,
that,
I'm
on
not.
top of that, if you look at the New Testament, Jesus also walked into some of these temples and said that it's a bloodbath. It's a slaughterhouse. He was actually mad at these temples for slaughtering animals. He didn't want to see that. He thought it was wrong to slaughter animals.
He thought it was wrong to sacrifice animals and other, humans for that matter. Although that was an Old Testament thing anyway that was carried over. But he thought it was pointless and frankly ridiculous to sacrifice
He didn't
animals
say it
to
was
God.
pointless. He said it was
And
immoral. He called it a bloodbath. He referred to it as a slaughterhouse. He
yes, because
didn't like animals being killed. Period.
these Pharisees, these I forget what the Jews call their priests, but these holy men were doing so way that was more so just a ritual for ritual's sake, like in the way that if you were to eat meat and be like, oh no, it's fine because I'll just eat double the lentils tomorrow. That's what he was referring to. That's why he was fed up with the way that they were acting in the temple. And that's what happened when he went into the temple and saw money changers also doing their thing, uh, driving them out with a bullwhip. So are you saying that money is not ethical as well because Jesus said so, at
Well, he
least
was against
according to a
usury.
Christian? Oh yeah, as seems
He
fucking
wasn't
true.
against money. He was against usury.
Yes, but he was also against
Slaughtering
commerce in
animals.
the temple.
He was also against slaughtering animals. He
In the
criticized.
temple as a way to get away with
No,
your
he
great
just plain
sin.
and simple was against slaughtering animals. And again, if you believe in God, you would believe in the Holy Trinity. Jesus would have said, "No evil shall enter my kingdom, and no animal should be slaughtered." Jesus sees animal slaughter as evil.
Yeah, slaughtering animals in order to try and cover up the great sins that you have
No,
committed against
he
God. Yes,
no,
that is
he
that is
sees
literally
animal
what it
slaughter
was.
as evil.
That is quite literally what it
Again,
was.
the again, God is quoted as saying, "No evil shall enter my kingdom; no animal shall be slaughtered." He sees animal slaughter as evil. So you're
Yes,
committing
and you're
evil by
you're you're
slaughtering
purpose you're
animals according to
purposefully
your own beliefs.
you're purposefully taking allegory. You're purposefully taking allegory and interpreting it purposefully because it fits your thing. You've memorized like three or four, not even full passages, just like the like literally
So
like the 4 or 5 words each
so if
that
God
allows you to believe that you
so
know something about
if God
Christianity.
says
And then you turn around and you try and spit it at me as though I don't know my shit. I might not be a Bible thumper. I might not be the kind of person who can quote things off of memory, but I have read Not all of the Bible, most of the Bible. I'm working on it. I'm working on
So
it.
tell me,
All right, and I know.
how would Jesus slaughter an animal?
How would Jesus slaughter an animal? Probably in as humane a way as possible, and he wouldn't do it just for the sake of it, or do it to try and cover up his sins.
So you're saying Jesus wouldn't eat meat if he didn't have to?
I don't know what he would have done.
Y-
Maybe
you-
not.
so
I don't know.
again,
I don't even know how you
where in the
extrapolated
Bible did
that to what I
Jesus
just
ever
said.
kill an animal?
I don't know.
Nowhere.
I don't think it
Nowhere.
was ever, dude. Where in the Bible did Jesus take a shit?
Okay, well,
You think Jesus never coughed squat?
we can presume he may have taken shits.
All
I don't
right, we
think
can
that's an important
presume that
detail
seeing as
that an
how this
author would
is
write.
we can presume seeing as how this is first century Bronze Age. I believe, yeah, it's literally the Bronze Age, and they didn't just have supermarkets back then. Chances are Jesus probably slaughtered an animal or
Then
two. He probably killed a goat.
why does it never make any mention of him ever killing an animal? It says he was a shepherd, he took care of his sheep, never mentions anywhere that he killed any animals, never mentions anywhere that he ever even ate meat.
Jesus was a carpenter. Again, you're taking allegory
He
and
was a
you're
carpenter and
literally.
he was a shepherd. He kept sheep.
All right, sure. But bottom line, you're taking allegory and trying to use it literally, and it's
Well,
not
it's
working
not
out
just
the way you think
allegory.
it's
Like,
working.
do you
It is
think
allegory.
so? Do you think him slaughtering animals and maybe his like dietary habits, that might have been something authors at the time might have taken interest in? If they never mentioned anywhere that he ever killed an animal, never mentioned anywhere that he would kill an animal in any kind of specific way, and again, it's also mentioned that God sees animal slaughter as a form of evil. God's initial plan for human beings was to live in a garden where nobody ate any meat. Why, if you're a Christian, would you have any interest in killing any of these animals?
Because God said we are allowed to kill animals for food and
Well, you don't need to.
certain other tasks. Bottom line, that is what it said. Now you're trying to. I literally did a stream on this yesterday. Don't watch it. I kind of it was a little all over the place. It wasn't the best stream of mine, but you're using Christianity. You're using doctrine from an egoist standpoint. You're not actually worried about what is said and what is meant by it. You're worried about how you can apply it to your standpoint. And like I don't know what your chat's saying. They're probably your diehards. They're
Well,
probably
tell
like, yeah,
me.
get him, man, get him.
Well, tell
But
me.
at the end of the day, dude, fucking, you're just incorrect. You're
What
incorrect,
would
and there's no other way
Jesus think
around it.
of your beliefs that it's okay to wipe out all of humanity because it's okay to like eat burgers?
I think Jesus is a smart guy. I think Jesus is a real smarter. Is probably smarter than me. Definitely smarter than you. And he would probably see that specifically that part of our little debate here was completely and totally ridiculous, and that I was obviously being facetious because why would I take that seriously? Oh, what if we weren't here? We are here.
Okay, so are you saying you don't actually agree with the argument you made earlier?
I'm saying that I was just saying whatever the hell I felt like in the moment, literally whatever came to my head, and yeah, you can extrapolate from that whatever you want.
You know,
Really doesn't
lying is
matter.
a
We're
sin.
here, huh?
You know, lying is a sin.
Bearing false witness, different from telling a white lie to a guy who thinks he's trying to mog me over his bicep weight when I beat the shit out of him if it came down to it.
Okay, well, maybe once I get into some MMA training, we can see about that.
You got a little shaky there. Well, maybe
No,
it's all right, dude. I'm on the other side. I can't get you. I can't get you. Relax.
yeah.
Man, I know what that was earlier.
All right. Well, maybe we can find out about that later. But anyway, do you think Jesus would make up lies like this and be dishonest? And when somebody's trying to have an actual debate, Do you think Jesus would make up these kind of silly lies?
Actually, Jesus was in plenty of ridiculous debates, and he knew how ridiculous they were, and he handled them. Maybe not exactly the way I handled them, but then again, I never made the claim that I am or are anything like Jesus, right? But yeah, no. Look, Jesus knows a con. Jesus knows bullshit when he sees it, and he knows how to handle it in a way that is not going to be all fucked up, you know?
Okay,
So.
so do you think Jesus would have a problem with the way animals are treated today?
Uh, in some ways, yeah, probably. Like if you think if you're under the impression I support like factory farming, no, of course not. I don't know anybody who is. Anybody who is probably
Okay,
a factory
so
farmer.
95% of animals on the planet, including in the United States, are factory farmed. So the likelihood of you never eating factory farmed meat is practically zero. So you are,
Okay,
in fact,
yeah,
in support of it.
okay,
So do you think it's important for Christians to be in line with Christ?
yeah, I do.
Okay, so you are not in line with Christ when you eat meat.
Not quite how it works.
Well, yes, you just said Jesus would not approve of factory farming. You buy and eat factory farmed meat. So you are not in line with Christ.
Jesus also said that, or Jesus and just the Bible in general says that you shouldn't steal. But if you are absolutely positively out of options, maybe you got to steal. You
Well, you're
know,
never out
at
of
the
options.
yeah, all right. Well, whatever you say, man. Bottom line is, I like meat. I'm gonna keep eating meat, and God's fine with that. You can continue to use my religion for
You just admitted God is not fine with
your
that. You just
egotistical.
admitted Jesus would
You can
not
keep
approve of factory farming.
catch me. You can keep trying to catch me in this weird thing where you use my religion, the word of my Lord, as some egotistical means to try and convince me or whoever you're trying to convince that meat is evil 100% of the time. And you should never eat it, and you should switch to a plant-based diet. But the bottom line is there is multiple passages that refer to the consumption of meat. Some of them are rules and regulations. Others are literally just, oh, they slaughtered meat. There is no they slaughtered meat and God got mad. It's just they slaughtered meat and they ate it. That's it. You
Yeah,
know?
so you just said God would not approve of factory farming. You also admitted that you support factory farming. So
No,
you're
I didn't.
doing things that God does not approve of while
Like
claiming we should be in
we're
alignment with
all
Christ.
you know what? Maybe you do need to watch my stream from yesterday. It's only an hour long. It's not that hard. We're all sinners. None of us are actually in alignment with
Well,
Christ.
look, when you knowingly and willingly commit sin on the day of
the
judgment, what do you think God's going
foundation
to think of that?
the foundation of Christianity is the understanding that we are all sinners and that we fall short of God's glory and Christ's glory. And we have to try our best. But when our
Well, you're
back is
not trying
against the
your best.
wall, I'm trying as best I can, man.
No, you're not. You
Yeah,
could eat a plant based diet and never support factory farming,
no,
but
I
you
couldn't.
choose not to do that.
No, I couldn't.
You absolutely could. If I can
Nah,
do it, then what is stopping you?
I can't bench 400 something pounds. That's what's stopping me, man.
Okay, well, regardless of how much you can bench, that doesn't make it impossible to not support factory farming. So when you're doing things that are well within your control, where you're knowingly committing some kind of act of sin or wrongdoing, on the day of judgment, God asks you, okay, well, why did you do this? Like, do you think, oh, well, I couldn't do it? Like, do you think that's gonna fly? God would
I think
know if you could or could not do it. And I think God, with his infinite wisdom, would know you absolutely could have, and you just chose not to. Just like
I'll
any
be
other wrongdoing you could commit. Like if you were to rape a child, like do you think telling God, well, I just couldn't not rape the child? Like
you're gonna compare eating meat to child rape.
I'm not comparing it to child
What the
rape.
fuck are
I'm
you?
just saying
What
the
are you? What are you
excuse.
doing, man?
So I'm just saying that excuse is nonsense. If you can live through life never raping children, never murdering somebody, never stealing, you can absolutely go through life never supporting factory farming.
Sure, whatever you say. Look, God has more important things to worry about than factory farming. Even if it is something on the list, especially with someone like me. I've been around the block, man. All right.
So do you think God is, yeah,
I think when it
so
comes to face up to what I've done in my life, I don't think factory farm. I don't think eating Purdue chicken is going to be
do you
at the
think
top of the
God is
list.
concerned with pandemic diseases that kill millions of people each year?
Probably, yeah. But then again,
Where do you think those
those can
diseases
also
originate
be
from?
punishments from him.
Well, where do you think those diseases originate from?
Could be a bunch of different
They
places, including
originate
factory
from animal
farming.
farming. So where do you think
Yeah,
the flu virus came from? Flu virus
excuse me.
originated from human beings eating waterfowl.
It's a very
Uh,
nice pivot there. Those a very seamless transition, I will say.
well, thank you.
You lost the
Tuberculosis.
religion debate, so you're like, oh, let's talk about pandemics.
Well,
Where did
we're still
Where
on
did HIV
religion.
come from?
Where
Did
yeah,
HIV come
HIV
from
came from people eating
factory
bushmeat,
farming?
particularly chimpanzees.
I heard it was from fucking chimpanzees.
No.
You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?
No. So
All right, cool.
HIV
Just making
came
sure.
from eating meat. Tuberculosis came from eating meat. Smallpox came from eating meat. All of these diseases that we're afflicted with have come from us eating meat. And you just mentioned that these diseases, they're a punishment from God. Do you think they might have been a punishment for eating meat?
Nope.
Well, they came from human beings' close proximity with animals through
Do
agriculture.
you think Sodom and Gomorrah was a punishment for eating meat? They were eating meat there.
The story of Sodom and Gomorrah, that was a punishment for being gluttonous, inhospitable, just terrible people.
In addition to,
What?
in addition
Well, they
to,
tried to rape an angel.
ooh, man, maybe if smallpox, if the flu virus, et cetera, was indeed a punishment from God, which not all of them are punishments from God, but there's a few that you could probably convince me of. Um, it's not from eating. It's not for eating meat.
How do you know that?
It's for other things, because as I said,
How do you know that?
as I said,
How do you know that?
as I said, eating meat is permitted
Yeah,
in
so
the
how do
Bible.
you know that? So how do you know these aren't punishments for eating meat?
So how do you what?
How do you know those aren't punishments for eating meat?
How do you know they are?
Well, I'm asking you, how do you know they're not?
But how do you know they are?
Well, I'm not saying I know they are. I'm asking you, how do you know they're not?
And I'm not
There's
saying
no way
I
for you
know,
to know that.
and I'm not saying I know they're not, other than the fact that I would guess, seeing as how it is literally stated in the Bible what animals you can and cannot eat. So,
Have you ever eaten pork?
yes,
Okay.
I ate
So,
pork tonight.
so please explain to me why you call yourself a Christian, that you say we should follow God, and then you're deliberately going against God's word.
That's an Old Testament thing that when Jesus came, he specifically said it's okay to eat pork.
Where did Jesus ever say it's okay to eat pork?
I don't have the exact quote, the passage right in front of me, but there were plenty of things that when Jesus came, he quite literally said it was okay or not okay to do, depending. And
So
eating
Jesus
meat was
never
not
said
one
it's
of those
okay to eat
things.
pork.
I don't know. Like I would, but or what I mean is, I don't know what passage he said that it was okay
He
to eat
never
pork.
said
But
it's okay to
there
eat
were
pork.
plenty of there were plenty of passages in the New Testament where Jesus would do things and they'd be like, yo, what the hell are you doing? Like, for instance, hand washing. Hand washing and ritual bathing was a big part of the Old Testament. And Jesus would eat without washing his hands at times. And they'd be like, yo, what the hell are you doing, dude? And he would end up saying, it's not about clean hands, it's about a clean soul, essentially, is what he would end up saying. I don't know where you're getting your information from to be so sure that he never said you're allowed to eat pork or
Well, it's interesting he
whatever.
mentioned having a clean soul is important because there are
Oh, here
things
we
like the
go.
Daniel
Next pivot.
fast that,
Yeah, next
again,
pivot.
that state meat corrupts the soul.
Sure thing. Yeah, whatever, man. Okay.
Okay, well, I think we might as well wrap this up. I don't like, as I mentioned before, I don't think there's any way of justifying meat eating without also accepting that it's okay to take away human rights. I think that I was able to demonstrate that in this debate. My debate opponent actually later retracted arguments he made, claiming, oh, it was all a joke, so this whole conversation was
And
basically a waste of time because he wasn't able to even
it was
provide an
obviously
argument.
a joke from the get-go. I
Yeah,
have
so
no
he
idea what the
wasn't
hell you're
actually
talking
able to
about.
provide an argument against the vegan position. I think
The
I was
vegan
also,
position is
yeah, I
gay.
think I was also able to
You just said
demonstrate
yeah.
that
You
vegan
just said
diets
yeah.
are
He just agreed.
healthful.
He just agreed with me.
Okay, you put pork
He
in your mouth,
agrees.
so yeah, who's
He
gayer
agrees.
here? So, I was also able to demonstrate that vegan diets are
Agreed. It's
healthful.
gay. That's all you need.
And I think I was also able to demonstrate, based on his own beliefs, he's a hypocrite. If he considers himself a
We're all
Christian
hypocrites,
who
Mr.
wants
Burgess.
to, well, I'm not. So
Yeah, you are.
maybe if God exists, he's going to judge me favorably on the day of
God will strike
judgment.
you down in your hubris. Where is
And
your shame in the face of our Lord?
and this guy claims to be a Christian, claims to be a follower of Christ, but deliberately goes against values that he believes Christ holds. So, all right. Do you want to make an ending statement or anything?
Yeah, shut the fuck up.
Okay. All right. Well, take care, dude. Maybe we can talk another time or something about maybe another topic. But
Yeah, sure.
enjoy the rest of your night, man.
You too. Have a good one.
All right. Well, that was nice and retarded, as I suspected it would be. Dodo, don't need to tell us you can't square circles. This guy's really dumb. No wonder he's Christian. Yeah. That was pretty bad. Thanks for the donation, Dodo.
And Jesus also approved of slavery and stoning people for being gay. I guess that's okay according to his logic.
Yeah, I don't know. We didn't really get into that, but thanks for the donation, Dodo.